HD. Visit our theatre rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
The Afternoon Jam, courtesy of
Bawaz, where shopping is fun, and you are number one.
Welcome back into it. It is the Afternoon Jam right here on Radio Alensa 105.6 in the Pietermaritzburg region, and you are listening to the Afternoon Jam and myself, Tid, and we are jumping straight into our interview of the day. Now, KZN has seen a worrying number of drowning incidents this season. Now, with some occurring even before the festival period began, a search and rescue operation continue for people missing at sea. We take a closer look at what's driving these tragedies for an uptake and what can be done to prevent it further and the loss of life. Joining us today on the afternoon is Daya Sudat, Media Director of Life Saving South Africa. How are you doing today, sir?
Very good afternoon, Ted, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So jumping straight into it, man. Daya, just to set the scene for us, how serious is the drowning situation in KZN at the moment, and how does this season compare to the previous ones?
Well, unfortunately, we've had quite a few tragic, fatal drowning reports, especially in KZN. It's also unfortunate that KZN is leading the statistics, the fatal drowning statistics nationally. So if we look at last year, we've seen similar spikes during the holiday season, and we've seen the larger number of drownings in KZN. If you look at some of the trends, we certainly have seen drownings that have happened in non-bathing beaches. If you look at the one in Belito, that was certainly very early in the morning when the lifeguards were not present. We've had few drownings in the Durban Central beaches, again, outside of the bathing areas and in times where the lifeguards were not on duty. Certainly the big one where we've seen the mass drownings at Pennington Beach, that was also outside of the lifeguards' watch, as well as after the lifeguards had gone off duty.
Now we started seeing drowning incidents even before the festival season. What factors could usually contribute this early for this increase?
Well, typically, once summer starts and once you get the schools closing as well as the universities closing, and then when you get the next wave of visitors that come down to KZN, we generally see a higher number of fatal drownings that occur along particularly the KZN coastline. But as I indicated, we also had a number of drownings in other parts of the country as well. So the weather factor certainly contributes to this. You normally get the ocean conditions, you get the cycles of spring tides, as well as the neap tides that actually many people are not able to or pay attention to the advisories. Similarly to what we have seen with flooding incidences. Despite the fact that there are various advisories, it's unfortunate you will still get people taking risks in low-lying areas, in trying to cross bridges that are already flooded, and you've seen people get washed away. But as far as the bathers are concerned, you've seen a number of bathers that actually drown in areas where these are even unpatrolled. We haven't really researched those factors. It could be affordability factors. People access a beach which is closest to them rather than going to where lifeguards are, where there's a designated bathing area.
also, once the festival season arrived, we noticed a massive spike during these drowning incidents. What changes during this period would increase it so dramatically? I mean, we spoke about how before the festival season it was already quite high, but as soon as the festival season started, it took off like nothing else. What was the contributing factor for that?
Again, it's the holiday season has this impact. Obviously, more people have the time to go to the beaches to bring the family. And you see traditionally, like you look at this December 16, you look at Boxing Day, you look at New Year's Day. Traditionally, these days attract a large number of bathers, across the country at all of the popular beaches. So it's something that happens. One of the things I think I need to also emphasize here, Ted, if you look at the role of the lifeguards, and Life Saving South Africa commends the professional lifeguards as well as our voluntary members who do duties on these days, from early in the morning to late in the afternoon, in the hot sun, in the wind, in the rain. And if you look at some of the designated bathing beaches, you don't hear of drownings at those particular beaches. So the
Right.
lifeguards are obviously doing something wonderfully well, and we hope the media, all media houses, can focus on that narrative that if you go to a bathing beach where there are lifeguards on duty, your risks are minimized because the lifeguards actually do the risk analysis. They assess the beach
Mm.
conditions and they set up the bathing beacons in the safest zone. If you go to a beach that is not patrolled, your risks are increased at those particular beaches.
Makes a lot of sense, actually. No, but
Yeah.
now, speaking on that, from the life-saving, or from the life-saving South Africa's perspective, what are the most common causes of drowning along the KZN coast? Is it, like you just said, people just going to the beaches that's closest to them instead of the designated bathing beaches?
Yeah, that is a huge contributing factor. The other factor, as I mentioned, you look at the missing bathers at Belito, as well as if you look at the Pennington one, after duty hours. Belito was early in the morning, when the bather went missing in the ocean. You could see that if people are swimming in times that where the lifeguards are, haven't opened the beach, or if they've closed the beach, then they place themselves at risk. Certainly, alcohol consumption is a huge factor.
Mm.
We've had this incident on the second at Pipeline Beach. The bather that was pulled out of this was just the pool, wasn't even the beach, but
Oh,
he was, yeah, he was well. The smell of on that particular patient was evident enough that the person was totally inebriated. And there are dozens of cases like that. I mentioned the fact that the Life Saving South Africa practices what we call proactive or preventative life saving. That is why you'll see, even if when there are thousands of bathers on Durban beaches or Strandfontein or Kings Beach, whichever beach across the country, you will see them behind the bathers in the ocean on their rescue boards, on their jet skis, on their rubber duckies, keeping the bathers at bay. And there's on a given day, on a given beach, there will be hundreds and hundreds of help outs. So in other words, they see the patient getting into difficulty even before they get into serious trouble, and then they help them out. So in that way, they prevent lots of drownings. And in many instances, when you've helped this patient, brought them to the shore, the evidence of somebody being under the influence of alcohol is pretty high. We often have to wait for postmortems of those who were fatal drowning patients, because the postmortems will then give indications of what the blood alcohol levels were in those particular individuals, and that then becomes evidence-based statistics on those who are deceased. Also, make up that sad fatality.
Well, thank you for letting us know. Now, how much of a role would you say that rip currents and rough sea conditions play? And do people actually genuinely understand how dangerous this can be? I mean, I know as a Durbanites that there are some deadly waves out there, especially during the night sequences. But how How severe is it actually?
Well, the fact of the matter is the ocean anywhere in the world, anywhere along our coastline is a dynamic environment. The ocean can change from hour to hour, right? Rip currents can develop, you could be looking at the ocean and you'll be absolutely calm. And because of various conditions, whether it's tidal changes, whether it's the wind, whether it's the weather conditions, whether a sandbank that was there where you could stand quite comfortably and enjoy the conditions. A sandbank could collapse and you could get this rush of water. Rip currents, always you'll find rip currents alongside piers, alongside groins, alongside rock formations. If you look at the Pennington incident, the mass drowning, we would have expected that the lifeguards who normally keep people in the tidal pool, they would keep them safe. But those bathers who unfortunately don't listen, like in some other areas, etc. 2 years ago, you'll remember there was this mass incident even on Durban Central beaches where
Right.
sandbanks collapsed, people were washed off alongside the pier. Fortunately, most of them were rescued. Now, these things can happen, and ordinary people may not necessarily be able to identify what exactly is a rip current. The
Mm-hmm.
simplest messaging that we can give is when you go down to the beach, only swim if the lifeguards are on that beach. If there's no lifeguards or if the beach is closed for whatever reason, do not swim. You can enjoy the beach, you can picnic on the sand, go for a walk, maybe wet your feet at the edge, etc. But don't go and swim, especially if you're not a accomplished swimmer, right? So there is lots of visuals and materials and learning materials on how to identify rips. But if you're not accomplished and you don't know the ocean conditions, then only swim where the lifeguards are on duty and stay between the red and yellow flags. As I indicated, the lifeguards get there early in the morning, they assess conditions, and they create the most safest bathing zone. The ocean is dynamic, it changes from hour to hour. If the lifeguards find that a rip is developing in the area where they determine it to be safe, and they move the bathing area either left or right, and they blow the whistle and instruct everybody to move, we expect the bathers to listen. We expect them to move into the next safest zone. Very often you would find that some bathers think they're inconvenienced and they start arguing with the lifeguards or swearing at them, etc. And the lifeguards are doing this for your own safety. So listen and follow that instructions. So we can maybe on another occasions we can go into how you identify it, but you know like every other advisory, whether it's road safety advisories or other safety advisories, simply follow the advisories, follow the instruction of the lifeguards, stay where the lifeguards have created this bathing area because they have eyes on you all the time in this bathing zone. Their
Right.
eyes are peeled on the bathers. As I said, whether it's a blistering hot day like today, whether it's rainy or windy or whatever the conditions, they have eyes on you. They are trained to see that if you're getting into trouble, even before you get into serious danger, they swim out and they bring you out. Okay. But if you're in an isolated area or an unpatrolled bathing area, who's actually going to swim out to to bring you out, so
Yeah.
that is the message. If you forget how to identify rips or where rips currents, etc., and as I indicated, you could see a rip in one area and conditions could change. A rip current could develop in another part of that beach. So rather just stay where the lifeguards are on duty.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Now, what are some of the biggest mistakes that beachgoers make when they ignore warning signs, flags, and lifeguard instructions?
Well, I think I made that point in the earlier responses that the
Yes.
biggest mistake you make is, firstly, coming to the beach under the influence of alcohol or getting into the water when you're inebriated. We must thank the law enforcement officials that did a fantastic job in most of the metros, confiscating alcohol, etc. which has contributed to the figures not being as high as we expected. But that's the first mistake. Second mistake is trying to go off into quieter areas where you think that you're going to enjoy it away from the crowds. That's a big mistake. Rather stay in the designated bathing area. And then the other big mistake is again, arguing and fighting and ignoring the lifeguard instructions, because when you do that, you are simply placing yourself at risk. The other big thing is children. Unfortunately, even the WHO, the World Health Organization, global drowning statistics reports indicate that children around 4 or 5 years old to around 17, they make up the biggest proportion in the age demographic of fatal drowning statistics and in non-fatal drowning statistics. Non-fatal where somebody has been saved, but they had gone under, and they could have, through oxygen depletion, could end up with say brain damage or other damages, etc., even though they survived. Okay, so that's what we refer to as fatal drowning, non-fatal drowning statistics. So children do make up this high statistic, and our advisory, Life Saving South Africa, advises children must be at arm's length all the time. If your child is not at arm's length, then they are not near enough. How often do you go, if you're on the pool deck of a hotel or a resort, and you see parents engrossed in the cell phones, and the child is at the water's edge? Little children shouldn't be even left alone in the bathtub at bath time. Just in a few seconds to go and answer a cell phone, you could have a tragedy. You could have a drowning. South Africa also has, we have flood-prone areas, but we also have very, very water-scarce areas. And with all the water outages, how many of us, all of us, store water in buckets and bathtubs and in various containers. These should be covered at all times. All it does, it takes a toddler to fall headfirst in even 5 or 7 centimeters of water, and sadly you have another drowning tragedy. So supervision of children at all times. When parents get to the beach, just identify where the lifeguard tower is. Go up to the tower or the lifeguard's demarcated area. Introduce your kids to the lifeguards. Let them chat. Let them hear from the lifeguards where they need to stay and why they need to stay there. And that is the kind of habit forming that we need to develop with young children, and develop this education so that they can actually grow up with the safety advisories. We will share with your radio station. Hopefully you can put it onto your website. We will share with you the Life Saving South Africa Water Smart. It is absolutely free of charge. Your listeners can scan a QR code, and they can download a 4-module water safety and drowning prevention program, which they can just pass on to family, friends, to everybody. It's absolutely free of charge. Water safety in the home, water safety at the pool, water safety at the beaches, and water safety at inland rivers and dams. And it doesn't even take more than 50 megs of data for parents, children, family members, faith-based organizations to learn and to preach the gospel of water safety and drowning prevention.
Well, thank you so much for that, for letting us know all the safeties and precautions that we should be taking when we're going as beachgoers. I know that many people never thought about it this far, but thank you for coming on and letting us know. Hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you very much. And Life Saving South Africa wishes all of your viewers and listeners safety around the beaches. We know school kids and university children are still on holiday, whilst most parents have gone back to work. So again, we wish everybody to enjoy themselves responsibly and safely.
Thank you for that. You enjoy your day, man.
Thank you very much. Okay.
And that was Daya Sadat, the media director for the Life Saving South Africa. Now, keep it locked in here on the Afternoon Jam, because right after the short break, we'll be coming back, and our main topic today is the school list for stationery getting a little bit too long, and do you actually need everything that's on that list? That's our main topic. Make sure you send in through your messages on our WhatsApp, and we'll be talking about that right after this.
The Afternoon Jam, courtesy of
Bawas, where shopping is fun, and you are number one.
Pet and